if you think of the blockchain as the games console for Web3, then when you're choosing a games console, it has to be super fast. It's a priority, isn't it? So that's where Arbitrum Nova can really excel, is the speed. The transaction costs are really, really cheap.
Welcome to the Deus Ex Down podcast.
GM, and welcome to the Deus Ex Down podcast. I'm your host, Kepler, and today we're talking to David, who's working on the gaming and NFT side for Arbitrum, and we will talk about Arbitrum's approach to gaming and what we can expect in the coming months. So, GM, David, great to have you on the show. Maybe could you give a small intro of yourself to the people that don't know you?
GM, sir, thank you for having us. Very, very grateful to be here. I've been a fan of your show for some time, and we've been speaking in other areas, so definitely great to link up with you again. For context, I'm David. I work on gaming and NFT partnerships at Arbitrum, which is the leading layer 2 for Ethereum. My personal background started in gaming when I was very young. I was hugely into RuneScape. I took a huge part of my childhood was spent on RuneScape at night, grinding. To be in the overall leaderboard was a big focus of mine, to the detriment of my education, but I think I learned a lot from it when I was young, and sort of life skills and how to navigate the internet, and definitely very valuable skills for crypto. So yeah, I would say RuneScape was sort of the pinnacle of my gaming, and yeah, always looking to get experiences like that in Web3 gaming. I think we will get there. Definitely very bullish on some of the games that are coming through, and hope that we get that kind of deep connection that gamers can have, like they had in games like RuneScape in the past, and then also World of Warcraft, and then the more recent ones as well, like Dota and League of Legends. So yeah, really excited for the future of Web3 gaming.
Cool. I never actually played RuneScape, but I heard from a lot of crypto people who basically got their first experience in trading through RuneScape. So that's interesting. So when did you join the Arbitrum team?
So I joined the Arbitrum team in July last year. So about 8 months I've been here now. The team's grown quite a lot since then. I think it was about 30 people, and now we're up to about 70. So some really steady growth, but also pushing pretty hard to become the scaling solution for Ethereum.
Cool. And are you focusing like specifically on Arbitrum Nova, or are you also working because I guess like Nova is more like the social NFT and gaming chain, and Arbitrum One more the DeFi chain, but are you like doing work for both, or is it solely focused on Nova?
So my focus is on gaming on both chains. To give you some context, Arbitrum One launched around 1 year and 2 months ago, and it did have a very vibrant gaming ecosystem, with TreasureDAO joining very early. They joined to build out so they started off as like a loot derivative, and then they built the small brains, but they wanted the small brains to become dynamic NFTs, and that wasn't really possible on ETH1, so that was part of the reason they moved to Layer 2 very early. So they were sort of the pioneers in Arbitrum gaming, and we worked very closely and supported them. One thing that did hamper gaming on Arbitrum, I would say 1 year ago, was the sort of transaction costs were a little bit higher, and the sort of 20 to 30 cents per transaction for like a sort of more complex swap, I would say. So gaming was a little bit hampered, but we have done two things to solve that in the past, say, 6 months. So the first one would be the Nitro upgrade, and that's the tech stack that both Arbitrum One and Nova run on. the Nitro upgrade really increased the compression of the call data going from Arbitrum onto Ethereum. So I think transaction costs came down by like 50 to 70%, and that sort of spurred on a whole new area of gaming that could happen on Arbitrum One. As a sort of parallel development, Reddit had came to the blockchain space and interviewed about, I think, 20 to 30 different blockchain providers 2 years ago, and they were looking to really scale the community points, but they wanted to subsidize gas, and they wanted the gas to be a fair bit cheaper than Arbitrum One. So that was where Arbitrum Nova came in as a sort of social and the gaming chain, where not all of the data is stored on Ethereum. It's stored with a data committee, which is made up of like Reddit and Google Cloud and a few others that are huge players in the space. They're part of the data committee, and that allows some off-chain data storage, but still posting some of the data to Ethereum. So we have sort of the two channels now, and we're much more able to serve gaming from a technology standpoint, with Arbitrum Nova being super cheap, but still there is some of the gaming ecosystem that's on Arbitrum One, which is also doing pretty healthy growth. So we don't have a focus purely on Arbitrum Nova as a gaming chain, but that is the way we see things going in the next, say, 6 months to 1 year.
Got it. So it's basically the games can decide on which chain they want to deploy. But I guess we will probably see more games just moving or deploying on Nova because for them it makes sense because of the lower transaction fees, because of the data committee.
100%, yeah. I think the gaming ecosystem that's building on Nova is very attractive at the moment. Some of the big players that are interested in doing really heavy subsidizing of gas so that they can onboard Web2 users much more efficiently are looking at Nova. Some more games that are sort of limited to what they can do on chain, but see the benefits of moving to Nova, even from Arbitrum One. Some games are looking into that. So we see the chain as a sort of sister chain, and not it gets equal attention between the both. So it's really up to the team what they're optimizing for. But definitely in future I see Nova building out very strongly. It just takes a little bit more time than sort of the DeFi projects that came to Arbitrum early on. It's much easier to stand up a DeFi instance on a chain than it is to deploy a full Web3 game. So development cycles are much longer, but there's a lot of interest and some really nice indie games that are already deployed, like the Damn Pirate Society, Metagates, and there's a couple more announcing in the next few weeks, specifically on Nova.
Cool. So you mentioned DeFi, and I think like Arbitrum One did a really good job at fostering a great ecosystem there. I mean, people from our DAO are fans of, for example, GMX, which is, I guess, like the biggest protocol. And we talked to AJ before also about like the BD approach you had for DeFi. Is that also like, are there any learnings you took that you now use for Arbitrum Nova and onboarding games, and what are like the similarities and what are the differences?
100%. I think DeFi on Arbitrum has done very well because we supported some of the teams, or we support all of the teams that come to Arbitrum a lot on the sort of customer success side. So we do put effort into the hype, the sort of the announcement up front, but there is much more waiting, is the feedback that we get from teams, waiting on to the effort that we put in once they've launched, and getting them everything they need to get awareness within the community and interlinking with different projects. So we're really focusing on that inclusive ecosystem that we're building. And what that means is that everyone gets a chance equally. So you don't have to have the right VCs on your cap table to get our attention. We're equally interested in the sort of indie and small teams that are coming through and doing really nice DeFi developments. And that's carrying forward into Web3 gaming as well. There's a lot of indie teams that are interested in building an Arbitrum, and we're really keen to see them be successful.
Got it. Yeah, that's cool. So, so one thing you mentioned is indie gaming. Is how are you approaching onboarding games? Is it that you have a strong indie focus, or are you also looking at let's call them AAA games, and do you have a portfolio view kind of for Nova? So you want a certain number of indie titles, AAA games, or different genres, or what's your take there?
So I think, on the indie game side, we're very strong in the sort of support that we offer and helping the grassroots teams develop. That's happened with Treasure DAO. They started out pretty small and now they're huge. The Beacon, Battlefly, all of these teams we really encourage and support, but also on the sort of top end AAA, they're more optimizing for having the best tech solution. So we feel that Arbitrum Nova is the best tech solution for Web3 gaming. It's super fast. It's 0.25 seconds per block. So if you submit a transaction within a game, then it can go straight through. And that's kind of if you think of the blockchain as the games console for Web3, then when you're choosing a games console, it has to be super fast. It's a priority, isn't it? So that's where Arbitrum Nova can really excel, is the speed. The transaction costs are really cheap, incredibly cheap actually, and also the security model as well. So the sort of Web2 gaming studios, I think it's fair to say that they are apprehensive about entering the space, a lot of them, but they're finding that they're very comfortable speaking to Arbitrum because of our background, because of the security in Ethereum, but also from a tech perspective, we think the chain stands out as a Web3 gaming solution.
So what kind of teams are approaching you right now? What kind of games are interested?
Yeah, there's a huge variety. We have a lot of inbound inquiries. Some of the game teams that have sort of went from being inbound inquiries into actually publicly building, we could say, are AI Arena, which is getting a lot of attention just now. The Forgotten Runes Wizards, they're building out a game. They're a huge NFT collection with some really nice views on IP. They're building out a game. And then Treasure DAO is also killing it as well. They're onboarding lots of games. So I would say there's a variety of indie games, but also AI Arena and Forgotten Runes Wizards are definitely on the sort of bigger end of Web3 gaming. So there's a huge variety.
Cool. And did you see an uptick in inbound requests once Beacon was that big of a success in December and January?
I would say so, yes. A lot of teams are optimizing for getting huge communities and getting a lot of success early on, and the Beacon provided that example for them. So that is something that a lot of gaming teams are looking to replicate, and certainly there's been an uptick in interest since then.
Cool. And how are you thinking about desktop versus mobile? Is that something that you're already thinking about, or is it more like you're giving everyone a chance that wants to build on Nova, or are you already do you have to basically pick and prioritize projects based on, okay, we think we don't, for example, we don't have enough mobile games, so we kind of have to fast track these, or how are you approaching that?
Yeah, I think mobile games at the moment don't have the ability to have a lot of on-chain interactions. So there's probably they don't optimize for the kind of some of the things that Nova is very strong for, or Arbitrum One even. They don't really need like fast transactions. They don't need gas. A lot of the mobile games is sort of NFTs indirectly linked to the mobile. You can't do in-game transactions on a mobile game. So certainly I do feel that Web3 games in the mobile space are much less integrated into Web3 and blockchains at the moment. Hopefully we see that changing. There is some mobile games that are building on Arbitrum right now, and it's obviously a huge part of the market, but I think product market fit is much better for browser-based games at the moment for Web3. And then I do see quite a strong push in the past 3 months of games coming to us that are desktop downloadable. But definitely I think Web3's product market fit currently is aligned to the sort of browser-based games.
It's cool because, I wrote about it before, about browser games, and that I hope that they will have there's the next wave of browser games, basically, which we had like early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's also a trend you're seeing, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think the Web3 gaming user base is at the moment pretty different to the Web2 gamers. A good example and an insight that I've found is that the Web3 gaming content creators are getting all of their engagement during the sort of working hours during the week. That's where they get the most amount of replies, the most amount of views on their streams. All of the metrics are strongly weighted to during the week. In Web2 and traditional gaming, it's the complete opposite, right? So the traditional gaming streams always run during the weekend. They get a lot more attention during the weekend than at night. So I think there's a very, very different type of gamer from Web3 to Web2 games. So I see Web3 gaming at the moment, the games that are doing really well are the ones that are not requiring like hours of gameplay per day, or that you would need to allocate to at the weekend. Perfect example of that is the Beacon, right? It took about, say, 10 to 20 minutes to play the dungeon during the day. And you can fit that into sort of a working week, and it aligns with the sort of Web3 time online, which is during the week from those metrics that we saw. So yeah, I think Web3 games are more suited to being like very fast gameplay, short and sort of daily quests. That's what we see is doing really well in Web3 at the moment. So I would say that's an observation that I've seen, is the success is really happening with these games that have short game loops and sort of daily interactions.
Yeah, I read that too. That it's really a different target group, and especially the example you gave with creators that have like their peak hours during working hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess like right now, Nova or Arbitrum One as well is more like targeting, or the games building there are targeting like the Web3 audience. Like in my opinion, it's an attractive audience because it may be like just a fraction of, or like a small subset of all the gamers that are out there, but it's the one that is easy to onboard at the moment, and it's also one that is willing to spend money, basically. So I think that's interesting, and I agree that basically you can get product market fit right now with targeting these users, and then later on you can build other stuff. I think that's also where like building an ecosystem becomes a good thing, where you at first have games that cater to Web3 players, and then later on you add games that are maybe more casual or are on mobile, but it's basically the same IP.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. What I would say is that the Web3 games are becoming more accessible to the sort of traditional gaming community. So they're doing sort of free to play elements where you don't need a wallet. You can just come and you can play. But if you want to actually build up your character and things like that, then you fall into the Web3 category. So I think that's a great pivot point that we're in just now, is most games are optimizing for having a free-to-play element, which is very important and encourage. And then I think the next wave of user onboarding is really going to be unlocked with the wallet developments that are ongoing. So we see huge progress in the past 6 months in that area. There's teams like Sequence by the Horizon team, MetaFab, and then there's a few others. They're all building out ways of building a wallet directly into the game, so that when a user comes, they just see the sort of login with an email and a password. They can get an account with a wallet linked to it, either custodial or non-custodial. And yeah, the onboarding experience is just much cleaner. So I'm very optimistic that the sort of gaming user base and Web3 is going to draft in that Web2 crowd. Definitely those teams are making huge developments. And we see Treasure DAO as well. They're pushing very hard. They've got the treasure tag, which you can come and you get your own treasure-based username. They're pivoting towards being able to log into the treasure site with that treasure tag and just have all your assets linked to it, play the games, and much less reliance on the sort of browser-based typical Web3 wallets like MetaMask and things. They've served a purpose, but I think to unlock the next wave of Web3 gamers, we need to really get away from that model and get seamless onboarding. So.
Yeah, I agree, especially the wallet part, because I mean, as a game, you kind of want to just optimize conversion rates, and having people deal with like private keys is is really bad for your conversion rates and retention rates. So yeah, definitely I see that as well. And do you like from an infrastructure perspective right now for games, do you see like other areas where you would like to see more development, or which areas are very well covered for now? Do you have any insights into that?
Yeah, I think the wallets are kind of the battleground for adoption of Web3, in my opinion, and they're all getting there. They've got really good progress. It's just being able to communicate that with the game developers on how exactly they can do this. I think a lot of game teams don't realise that this toolkit is available, and how to use it. It is pretty easy to incorporate into a game, some of the ways that it's been set up, but I think they need to get a better awareness. I think game developers, the wallet side of things. I think also having sort of game streaming built into the Web3 games is very important. We saw the most successful ones are the ones that manage to create good user-generated content and have an active user community spreading the word and streaming. So I do think Web3 games need to sort of incorporate easier streaming and links to social outlets. So I would say that would be a next thing for games to focus on as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. So how, like, going back to your BD approach, you talked about like all the inbound requests you get. Are you also doing outbound? Like, are you actively targeting games, for example, that just raised around and not clear where they want to deploy, things like that? Or is it more like you wait, basically because you help your games a lot, you like focus on word of mouth basically and getting referrals from these games? Or is it also something that you actively do?
Yeah, I would say Arbitrum as a team and partnerships in BD is active and outbound outreach. Some of the best partnerships that we have came from outreach, so we definitely value that. And yeah, there's a huge spread of things that we're looking for. Teams that have really strong games, but they've not been able to grasp a good community. So possibly migrating to Arbitrum could solve a lot of those problems for them. That's a good product market fit we have. Also the huge AAA studios. We obviously have a lot of strong points being built on Ethereum and being the first solution that you can actually build a game on, whilst being secured by Ethereum, we feel, with Arbitrum Nova. So gaming on Ethereum is kind of a new area. It's generally been relegated to sidechains and all L1s, but certainly we now have that ability.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess like when you look at games, are there certain evaluation criteria or maybe even red flags where you say, okay, man, we have like a very broad support for basically any team, but there are some things that we cannot allow or I mean, it's still allowed to deploy, of course, but you don't actively support it.
Yeah, Arbitrum is like a permissionless blockchain, so anyone can deploy. We do look to support everyone, whether that it kind of aligns with what we like personally and not, as we try to abstract that component out of it. But what I would say is like the most promising gaming teams coming through now are the ones that have got a focus on building a fun game and sort of having a low barrier to entry. I think a lot of the sort of Web3 based AA and AAA games that are currently being built, they've kind of been launched with a lot of VC funding, and the barrier to entry for those is going to be very high to get their investors' return on investment. So I think at the moment the best chances of real adoption and success for Web3 lies with the indie game teams and also the traditional game studios, the ones that are sort of optimizing for getting VC's return on investment. I'm personally not as optimistic about. So I think having a low barrier to entry, like $40 to mint the NFT, like in the Beacons example, is just absolutely perfect. A lot of the games, some of them are going like $200, $300, and there's just absolutely no way that the Web2 user base is ever going to tap into this or have any interest. So certainly I'm personally most interested in the sort of games that are fun and have a low barrier to entry. In terms of red flags, what I don't like to see is games that are optimizing for the NFT mint, and there's a huge focus on that and less focus on the actual building out the game. I do recognise that the NFT mint is a funding mechanism, and it is certainly an important part of Web3, but it has to be a balanced approach and not the sole focus of the team. I would say that's the one thing that definitely could be a red flag for Web3 game teams.
Yeah, I agree, because also you're talking a lot about community, and I think that makes total sense for like the current state of Web3 gaming. And like the NFT mint is kind of difficult for community building, right? Because you have a lot of free mints as well, which may be better for that. And for example, if you had like land NFTs and then you basically hide UGC behind, basically you NFT gate UGC, that also doesn't help with community building. So yeah, I agree here. It makes total sense.
I also see that NFTs typically have been like 10k collections, but I think for the gaming based NFT launches, then typically 10k isn't really enough to build your community whilst having like a low barrier to entry. So I do think in future the NFT mints linked to games will have much higher volumes, so that it still can be $40 and $50 to enter, but there is a bigger community. I'm more optimistic about teams that are doing the higher collections rather than the low volume exclusive ones that have to have a premium, and the focus is on making the users money. I think that's not really a great way of getting the Web2 user base in. Because you have to remember that in traditional gaming, it's about $40 to $50 to buy a game. So it's not $200. And we should be optimizing for that entry point to be similar to Web2.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, yeah, I guess for the entry point, I agree. I think because we talked about Web3 gamers before, I think like the potential for like the basically in-app purchases so far have been rather small, and I guess like whales just bought a lot of them. And I think there's like potential on the high end to basically sell higher value items, but completely agree for like the onboarding and for like the average player, having the barrier to entry as low as possible is the best way. Because in the end, it's conversion rate optimization in a way. So you're talking to a lot of teams daily. Can you maybe share some insights? So I'm mostly interested in like what brought them to Web3, especially like the Web2 teams that, for example, already created games on the App Store. And also what are the challenges? Like what kind of support do they ask you for?
Yeah, 100%. I think the Web2 based games that are moving into Web3 are interested in the sort of new funding models. Previously, you had to rely on VCs investing in the game to get it off the ground in the sort of traditional gaming model, whereas in the Web3 space, it's a more community-based effort where the community members invest in the alpha stage. They get exclusive access. They then become long-term members of the community, and they support the beta testing. It's definitely a more user-focused approach to launch a game, in my opinion. So I'm really a fan of that. Personally, I'm a fan of the ownership model and actually owning on-chain your assets. So I think that the Web2 teams are starting to recognise that as well, that people feel more engaged with their assets and the game, that the assets they have in a game, if they have them as a sort of digital collectible. Certainly the younger generation are leaning into the digital collectible part, and I 100% appreciate that. Having my background in RuneScape, you weren't able to sort of own your assets. You certainly couldn't trade them outside the game. And yeah, you were definitely at the mercy of the game developers, whether you still own those assets in future. So yeah, I think those are the key benefits that Web2 teams are seeing. It's just deeper levels of engagement with the community and new funding models.
Got it. Yeah. And do they also like, what are they having difficulties with? Like, is there something that is very different from like Web2? Yeah. What are like the barriers for the teams, basically? We talked about barriers for users, but what about the teams?
Yeah, definitely. The barriers for a Web2 team are that they have to build the Web2 game, which was already a huge endeavor for them, but then they have to now have another vertical added on to that, the Web3 part. So having team members that can help navigate that is very important, because it is very difficult for an outsider to evaluate like which blockchain has an active community and what metrics are important to optimize for. So certainly they definitely need good Web3 advisors, and those I guess are kind of hard to come across, solid ones. So that I think that's a big challenge for them. And yeah, the infrastructure part I think is it's just an awareness of the infrastructure. Like the web, the wallets are there now, and the connections to Unity SDK and our new engine it's all there, ready to go. It's just a lack of awareness and conveying how these products can help Web2 teams build games. So I think those are the two things that we need to do better on.
So I guess that's also where you are helping the teams, right? Because if they are just not aware of the infrastructure, you can just point them to like the right sources basically. And can they also come to you, for example, let's say they want to have an NFT mint? Are you also providing advisory for that? Or is it more like you're referring them to the right person, for example, to another game that did something similar?
Yeah, 100%. That's where we can be very useful, is that coming back to the gaming infrastructure and our outreach, a lot of the outreach on gaming from a BD perspective is towards the infrastructure and getting the best infra to support our Arbitrum. So then when we speak to the game teams, we have a huge internal directory that has all of the different gaming infrastructure and the different elements, and then we make referrals for the team onto the infrastructure and really enable seamless development of the game. And often a lot of the game teams don't realise that they can abstract the MetaMask wallet out of the game and have actual built-in wallets. They just don't know that that's possible. So that's where the partnerships team can really be helpful, is getting them all of the right tooling.
Got it. Yeah. I think that's like the best way to just help teams wherever they need help. Yeah. So let's look a little bit into the future. So how do you see this playing out for Nova? Like, what kind of games will launch in, let's say, this year? Is that something you can already talk about, or do you have like internal goals maybe of how many live games you would like to see on the chain, and maybe even like the trading volumes and daily active users, stuff like that?
I think we're optimizing for having games that are successful rather than we're kind of going for the sort of quality over the quantity approach, I would say. So we would rather see 10 games that are very successful than 100 game announcements that then didn't find good product market fit on Nova. So certainly we're optimizing for customer success. We think that speaks volume. It definitely spoke volume to teams looking at the beacon, for example. I do think that teams that are looking to, in the future, build games that don't necessarily market themselves as Web3 games, but they leverage blockchain technology and they abstract some of that away in the background, then definitely Nova is the best fit for them. For speed, security and cost, certainly very cheap. They can almost, in Nova, you can subsidize gas fees for a lot of your users, especially like the Web2 users. So they can come, they can claim their NFT, they can use it within the game without ever having to really sort of load up ETH into a wallet. I think that's a real strong point of Nova, is that they can abstract that gas away. I mean, that was why Reddit chose Nova, is to be a scaling solution on Ethereum, but also pay the users gas for a lot of the transactions. So I definitely see Nova becoming a key infrastructure layer for the bigger game teams. In terms of games that are coming this year, we have Bitmates, which is like an MMO. Really, I've played the alpha of that and really excited for them to come soon. They have an NFT collection on L1. We also have Kuroro Beasts, which is kind of like a Web3 Pokemon. Really excited for that team. AI Arena, definitely currently making a huge splash on the Web3 sort of social media about their game. It's a smasher style with AI elements developed into the back end. So there's kind of there's a channel for very advanced users, but also a sort of easy to play option for users that just want to come and have fun. So really excited about AI Arena, the Forgotten Moons Wizards. Touched on them a little bit as well. They're building out a game, and yeah, a lot of advanced discussions, and really excited about where it's going.
Yeah, and I mean, for me personally, I know all these names, so it's definitely like well-known names within the Web3 community. Yeah, it basically just really shows your focus, and yeah, it's very representative of like your community approach and also the focus on indie games. So yeah, that's nice to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I definitely think that we'll see really good fit with the sort of traditional gaming studios when they come into Web3. I've seen a survey recently, and we're not there yet. Like, we definitely don't have broad interest in the traditional gaming companies to come into the space right in this minute. But I do think that as the tooling develops and as they see the vibrance of the communities and the success, we will get there. And that's where we will also be pushing very hard. We're not exclusive just to indie games, but right now, I think that is where Web3 gaming is at. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you also, so I guess like indies are in smaller genre. I mean, it's not really small, but it's a subset of games. And I think like an even a smaller subset is on-chain games. So you mentioned that Nova is cheap and fast. Do you think that on-chain games will be possible there as well? Or is it more something that basically, yeah, you want to have like some of the game state on chain, like NFTs, but not really the whole game?
No, definitely I like to see some of the game on chain and really actually using Web3 elements of it. I think there's a couple of teams that are speaking to us, and they have quite on-chain game whips that are on chain, and they are subsidising the cost. One of them I heard is paying around $30,000 to $50,000 a month in gas fees for their users, whereas if they are looking at moving to Nova, they could probably save about a factor of 10 on that. So it becomes down to the point where a couple of $1,000s per month can cover a huge user base of their transactions on chain. And then, yeah, you really start to unlock this seamless, frictionless experience where the games can have on-chain transactions. You can pick an item up in the game, you can mint it, etc., and you're not always relying on going to an external wallet. So yeah, I think we'll definitely get there this year. I'm very optimistic about that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's really cool because basically, I mean, for me, on-chain games are essentially the DeFi of gaming, right? They're really the decentralized part. They enable permissionless interoperability, and it's like true ownership, I guess. Because ownership is a spectrum, but like on-chain games are then really on the high ownership side. So that's really cool. And do you see like certain game genres or mechanics that are especially suitable for on-chain games, or like the teams you're talking to, are they building similar things, or is it really broad and different?
I think it's broad. The strong theme is the sort of punchy style games that are like the dungeon crawlers, the roguelikes. I think at the moment an MMO is too much of a lift for a Web3 team, like a huge MMO that competes on the world stage. There is some smaller MMOs that are coming, really optimistic about them, like Metagates. They're building a really nice MMO out on Nova. But yeah, I think definitely the ones with short game whips are the ones that I see having good product market fit, and definitely it's a strong theme right now. Yeah. One thing that I don't want to lean too much into is like over amplifying certain games and then other games feel left out. So that's kind of why I try not to touch too much on specific games.
Okay, thanks a lot for your insights. And what's like the best way where people can follow you, and especially like gaming and Arbitrum?
Definitely. So I think the first thing to do is follow the Arbitrum account. We do amplify all range of teams through that. It's very important to us that everyone gets an equal chance. So you can definitely find new small teams and the bigger teams all through the Arbitrum Twitter account. My personal account is David_Kokora. So certainly feel free to follow me there. And love to speak with any game teams and any gaming infrastructure that is looking to leverage Arbitrum technology. We're here to help and focus on what you're optimizing for.
Cool. So thanks for your time, and excited what's next for gaming on Arbitrum.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, and looking forward to keeping in touch with you and speaking again soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Deus Ex DAO podcast, a place where some of the most progressive and innovative builders, thought leaders, and traders in the crypto space come together to discuss all areas of the crypto industry. Whether you're into DeFi, Layer 1s, Layer 2s, NFTs, or anything in between, we've got you covered. And as a reminder, nothing said on this podcast should be construed as financial advice or as a solicitation to buy or sell any digital asset or security. The comments, views, and opinions expressed by the hosts or guests on the podcast are their own. As always, you'll need to do your own research.